The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Marcus Chen pushed the industrial cart down aisle 7 of Quickmart. His uniform deliberately rumpled, his name tag reading Dave. The cleaning supplies rattled softly as he moved, careful to keep his footsteps quiet on the worn linoleum floor. That's when he heard it, a sound that made him freeze mid-step. Someone was crying. Not the loud, dramatic kind of tears, but the quiet, desperate kind that people shed when they think no one is watching. Marcus turned his head toward the customer service counter and saw her, a young woman in a Quickmart polo hunched over behind the lottery machine, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and her name tag read Sarah. She clutched her phone to her ear, her voice barely above a whisper. I know, but I can't work any more hours than they're giving me," she said, her voice cracking. "They cut me down to 12 hours this week." 12? How am I supposed to pay rent with 12 hours? Marcus found himself leaning closer, pretending to organize cleaning supplies while straining to hear "No, Dad, I can't ask them for more shifts. You don't understand. If I complain about anything, they'll find a reason to let me go completely." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "Remember what happened to Jessica?" She asked about getting consistent hours, and 2 weeks later they said she was no longer a good fit for the team dynamic. There was a pause, and Marcus could hear a muffled voice on the other end of the phone. "I tried applying other places, but everyone wants full availability, and with my class schedule." Sarah's voice broke entirely. "I feel like I'm drowning, and nobody here even knows my name. To them, I'm just another body to plug into whatever slot they need filled." Another pause. Then, the words that hit Marcus like a physical blow. "Sometimes. I wonder if it would just be easier to disappear. Maybe then someone would notice that I was even here in the first place." She let out a bitter laugh. "But who am I kidding? They'd probably just be relieved they don't have to deal with my availability issues anymore." Marcus's hand tightened around the mop handle. Sarah had no idea who he was, that the man pushing the cleaning cart was Marcus Chen, founder and CEO of Quickmart, the company that employed over 50,000 people across 12 states. The company whose policies she was describing with such devastating clarity. "I just wish," Sarah continued, her voice barely audible now, "that someone up there in their corporate offices would spend just one day down here. See what it's really like when your rent is due, but you only got scheduled for 2 shifts this week because the computer decided you're not optimally flexible." She ended the call and sat there for a moment, staring at the phone in her hands. Then she took a deep breath, stood up, straightened her uniform, and walked back to the register with a smile that Marcus now recognized as entirely manufactured. That night, Marcus sat in his hotel room, not the executive suite he usually booked, but a modest room at a chain hotel near the store, and opened his laptop. The blue glow illuminated his face as he pulled up the employee database and typed in Sarah Martinez. The file that appeared told a story that made his chest tight. Sarah Martinez, 22 years old, part-time cashier at store number 847 in Phoenix, Arizona. Hire date, 14 months ago. Performance reviews, exemplary across the board. Customer satisfaction scores, consistently in the top 10%. Disciplinary actions, 0. But then Marcus saw the scheduling data, and his heart sank. When Sarah had first been hired, she was working 28 hours per week, a solid part-time job for a college student. But over the past 6 months, her hours had been steadily declining. 28 became 24. 24 became 18. 18 became 12. Marcus dug deeper into the system logs. The pattern became clear. Every time Sarah had requested time off for exams or had to call in sick, the automated scheduling system had flagged her as low reliability. The algorithm, designed to maximize efficiency and minimize labor costs, had gradually pushed her toward fewer and fewer hours that no human manager had reviewed these decisions. No one had looked at her stellar performance reviews or her customer satisfaction scores. The computer had simply run its calculations and determined that Sarah Martinez was expendable. Marcus had signed off on that scheduling system 3 years ago. He remembered the presentation from the consulting firm, Advanced Workforce Optimization, Reducing Labor Costs Through Intelligent Scheduling. They'd shown him graphs and projections, promised millions in savings, assured him that the system would identify truly committed employees and reward them with stable hours. What they hadn't told him, what he'd been too removed from the front lines to see, was that truly committed meant willing to sacrifice everything else in their life for work. It meant that single mothers, students, anyone with caregiving responsibilities or second jobs would be systematically weeded out. The next morning, Marcus returned to store number 847, once again in his janitor's disguise. He watched Sarah arrive 10 minutes early, as always, and noticed details he'd missed before. Her shoes were worn, but meticulously clean. Her uniform had been mended in a few places, but was pressed and spotless. She carried herself with quiet dignity despite everything. During her lunch break, Marcus saw her in the parking lot, sitting in a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked windshield. She was eating a peanut butter sandwich from a brown paper bag while reviewing what looked like class notes. Her phone buzzed with a text message, and he watched her face fall as she read it. That afternoon, Marcus finally approached her. He'd rehearsed this moment, trying to figure out how to start a conversation without raising suspicion. "Excuse me," he said, pushing his cleaning cart nearby as she restocked the gift card display. "I'm still pretty new here. You seem like you know what you're doing. Any advice for someone trying to make a good impression?" Sarah looked up, surprised that anyone had spoken to her. Her genuine smile, the first real one he'd seen from her, transformed. Her face sure. I mean, I'm not really the person to ask. I've been here over a year, and I'm still... She trailed off, then seemed to reconsider. "Just show up on time and do whatever they ask, I guess. Don't ask too many questions. You don't like working here?" Marcus asked carefully. Sarah glanced around to make sure no managers were within earshot. "It's not that I don't like it. It's just complicated." She paused, seeming to weigh whether she could trust this stranger. "I used to think if you worked hard and did your best, that would be enough. But I'm learning that's not always true." "What do you mean?" "I started here when I was in my first year of college. I thought it would be perfect, flexible, part-time work while I got my degree in social work, and for a while it was. I was getting enough hours to pay my bills. I liked most of my coworkers, and the work wasn't too bad." She resumed stocking cards, her movements efficient and practiced. But then something changed. "I started getting fewer shifts, even though my reviews were good and customers never complained about me." Marcus felt sick. "Did you ask anyone about it?" "I tried talking to my supervisor, but she said it was all handled by corporate now. Computer scheduling for maximum efficiency." Sarah's voice took on a bitter edge. "Efficient for who, though?" "Not for me, trying to figure out how to pay tuition when I never know if I'll have 10 hours of work or 30 in a given week." She finished with the gift cards and started wiping down the counter, her movements sharp with suppressed frustration. "The worst part is feeling invisible. Like, I know I'm just one person in a huge company, but sometimes I fantasize about marching into corporate headquarters and asking whoever makes these decisions to try living on my schedule for just 1 month." Marcus's throat felt tight. "What? Would you tell them?" Sarah stopped cleaning and looked directly at him. For a moment, her professional mask slipped entirely. "I'd tell them that we're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. I tell them that when you cut someone's hours, you're not just reducing labor costs. You're affecting whether they can afford their medication, whether they have to choose between textbooks and groceries, whether they can keep their apartment. Her voice grew stronger. I tell them that their workforce optimization feels like punishment for being human. She caught herself getting emotional and quickly resumed cleaning. But that's just a fantasy. People like that don't come to places like this. That evening, Marcus called an emergency video conference with his executive team. Faces appeared on his laptop screen. His CFO in New York, his head of HR in Chicago, his vice president of operations from the corporate office in Denver. I need to understand our scheduling system, he said without preamble. Walk me through how it actually works. His CFO, Janet Rodriguez, pulled up a presentation. The advanced workforce optimization system has exceeded all projected savings. We've reduced labor costs by 18% over 3 years while maintaining productivity metrics. Tell me about the human impact, Marcus said. There was a pause. His VP of Operations, Robert Kim, cleared his throat. Well, we've seen some adjustment periods as employees adapt to more dynamic scheduling. Cut to corporate. Speak, Robert. I want to know what happens to an employee when the system flags them as low reliability. Janet answered. The algorithm identifies patterns that correlate with decreased productivity or higher turnover risk. Employees who frequently request time off, have irregular availability, or call in sick above the statistical average are given fewer hours to minimize operational disruption. And no human reviews these decisions? The beauty of the system is that it eliminates subjective bias, Robert said. It's purely data-driven. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Data-driven, right? And what happens to those employees who get their hours cut? Typically, they either adjust their availability to meet our needs or they find employment that better fits their lifestyle. HR Director Linda Walsh said smoothly. You mean they quit because they can't survive on 8 hours a week? Well, I wouldn't put it quite like that, I would. Marcus cut her off. Because I've seen it happening to real people with real problems that our optimized system is making worse. The next day, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. He called the store manager, Pete Ramirez, and told him to expect a corporate visit. But when Marcus walked into store number 847 that morning, he wasn't wearing his janitor disguise. He was dressed in a simple navy suit, no tie, carrying a briefcase that felt heavier with each step. Pete was waiting nervously by the customer service desk, clearly having been warned by corporate that the CEO himself was making an unscheduled inspection. Mr. Chan, we weren't expecting, we're honored to have you here. Is there anything specific you'd like to see? Pete was sweating despite the air conditioning. I'd like to speak with your team, Marcus said quietly. All of them. Can you gather everyone who's working today? Within minutes, a small group had assembled near the front of the store. Marcus recognized several faces from his days undercover. The older woman who worked part-time in the deli, the young man who unloaded trucks, the teenager who collected shopping carts. And there was Sarah, standing slightly apart from the group, her expression unreadable. My name is Marcus Chen, he began. Some of you might know me as the founder of QuickMart. Others might know me as Dave, the new janitor who's been working here. This week, a ripple of shock went through the group. Sarah's eyes widened as recognition dawned. I came here undercover because I wanted to understand what was really happening in our stores. What I found was something that's going to keep me awake for a long time. He looked directly at Sarah. I heard one of our employees, one of our best employees, talking about feeling invisible, about wondering if it would be easier to just disappear. Sarah's face flushed, but she didn't look away. Sarah Martinez, Marcus continued, has worked here for 14 months. Her customer satisfaction scores are in the top 10% company-wide. She's never been late, rarely calls in sick, and according to her supervisors, she's someone they trust to train new employees. He pulled out a folder, but our scheduling system has cut her hours from 28 per week to 12, not because of her performance, but because she had the audacity to request time off for college exams and call in sick twice. When she had the flu, Pete started to speak, but Marcus raised a hand. This isn't Pete's fault. This is my fault. I signed off on a system that treats people like interchangeable parts. I let consultants convince me that efficiency meant removing human judgment from human decisions. His voice grew stronger. Well, I'm here to tell you that ends today. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a printed document. Effective immediately, the Advanced Workforce Optimization System is suspended. Every scheduling decision will be reviewed by a human manager who knows the employee and understands their circumstances. The group was silent, but Marcus could see the emotional impact on several faces. But that's not enough. We're also implementing what I'm calling the Dignity Protocol. No employee will have their hours cut without a conversation. No one will be penalized for requesting time off for school, family emergencies, or health issues. And we're creating employee advocate positions workers who will represent their colleagues' interests when policy decisions are made. He turned back to Sarah. I owe you an apology. Not just as your CEO, but as a human being who forgot that behind every efficiency metric is a person trying to build a life. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she stood straighter. I never thought anyone was listening. That's the problem. We weren't. But we are now. Over the next hour, Marcus sat with the group and listened to their stories. The part-time deli worker, Maria Santos, talked about having to choose between her job and caring for her elderly mother. The truck unloader, Kevin Johnson, explained how the irregular scheduling made it impossible to plan childcare with his ex-wife. The teenager, Ashley Wong, described the stress of never knowing if she'd have enough work to help her family with bills. Each story reinforced what Marcus was beginning to understand. Efficiency without compassion wasn't efficiency at all. It was just cruelty with better marketing. That afternoon, Marcus sent a company-wide email. Subject: We need to do better to the entire Quick Mart family. This week, I went undercover in one of our stores. I cleaned floors, emptied trash, and most importantly, I listened. What I heard changed everything I thought I knew about our company. I heard employees good, dedicated people talking about feeling invisible. I learned that our scheduling system was punishing workers for being human, for getting sick, for having families, for going to school to better themselves. I founded Quick Mart 24 years ago with a simple belief that everyone deserves honest work at honest wages, with dignity and respect. Somewhere along the way, in pursuit of growth and efficiency, we lost sight of that mission. Starting Monday, we're making changes. 1. Our automated scheduling system is being replaced with manager-led scheduling that takes individual circumstances into account. 2. We're creating employee advocate positions in every region, workers who will help ensure that policy decisions consider the human impact. 3. No employee will be penalized for requesting time off for education, family care, or health needs. 4. We're establishing a direct communication line from frontline workers to executive leadership, because the best ideas often come from the people closest to the work. This isn't just about policies. It's about remembering that Quick Mart isn't a building or a system. It's the thousands of people who serve our customers every day. They deserve better than we've been giving them. To our employees, if you felt invisible, I see you now. If you've been struggling, we're going to find ways to help. If you've been afraid to speak up, that fear ends today. We have a lot of work to do, but we're going to do it together. Marcus Chun, founder and CEO, Quickmart. 3 months later, Marcus returned to store number 847, but this time, he announced his visit in advance. He wanted to see how things had changed. The transformation was immediately visible. Employees moved with more confidence, smiled more genuinely, engaged more freely with customers. The building looked the same, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Sarah was still there, but now she wore a different badge. Employee advocate, store number 847. She greeted Marcus with a firm handshake and a smile that reached her eyes. "How are things?" He asked. "Different," she said. "Better. I'm back up to 26 hours a week, and I know what my schedule will be 2 weeks in advance. But the biggest change is that people feel heard." She led him to the break room, where a bulletin board displayed photos and stories from employees. "We started this wall of recognition, not for sales metrics or perfect attendance, but for the small acts of kindness that make this place work." Maria covered an extra shift so Kevin could attend his daughter's school play. Ashley helped train 3 new employees, even though it wasn't part of her job description. Marcus studied the board, feeling something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "There's something else," Sarah said. She pulled out a letter. "This is from a customer named Mrs. Patterson. She wrote to corporate to tell you that the employees here helped her figure out how to use the pharmacy's automatic refill system when she was overwhelmed after her husband's death. She said, and I quote, 'These people didn't just help me with my prescription. They helped me remember that there's still kindness in the world.'" Marcus read the letter twice, then looked up to find Sarah watching him carefully. "You know what the most important change has been?" she asked. "Tell me. We remember now that we're in the business of serving people, not just customers, each other." When Kevin needed to leave early last week because his son was sick, 3 people offered to cover his shift. When Maria was worried about missing work for her mother's doctor appointment, I helped her talk to Pete about flexible scheduling instead of her just calling in sick. She paused, then added, "We're not just surviving our jobs anymore. We're building something together." As Marcus left the store that day, he noticed a small sign by the employee entrance that hadn't been there before. It was handmade, printed on regular paper, and laminated with clear tape. "This is a workplace where humans work. If you're struggling, speak up. If you need help, ask. If you see someone hurting, reach out. We take care of each other here." Below it, in smaller text, suggestion of Sarah Martinez, employee advocate. 6 months later, Quickmart's employee satisfaction scores had reached an all-time high. Turnover had dropped by 40%. Customer satisfaction was up. But for Marcus, the most important metric was one that couldn't be quantified: the knowledge that when his employees went home at night, they felt valued, seen, and supported. The company had grown from that first small store in Phoenix to over 50,000 employees across 12 states. But Marcus had learned something that no business school had taught him. Growth without compassion isn't really growth at all. It's just expansion. And sometimes, the most important lesson a CEO can learn comes from spending a week mopping floors and listening to the quiet conversations of people who thought no one was paying attention. Because everyone deserves to be seen. Everyone deserves to matter. And everyone deserves to know that their struggles and their humanity are valued by the people they work for. If you've ever felt invisible at work, if you've ever wondered whether anyone notices the sacrifices you make or the challenges you face, this story is for you. You matter. Your struggles are valid. And somewhere, someone is working to make sure that workplaces remember what it means to treat people with dignity. Don't give up. Don't disappear. Speak up, because your voice might be exactly what someone needs to hear to start making changes.